Let's set the scene.
Set it, Kristen.
Okay.
Take 5.
Let's set the scene. You're driving down a lonely road in Wisconsin. Maybe you're on your way to sample the best cheese curd that the state has to offer. And then out of nowhere, you see a truck in your rearview mirror that does not seem to be slowing down. Now, before you have the chance to get out of Dodge, you're rear-ended. You and the driver are seemingly okay, but your car not so much. So as you're waiting at some small-town mechanic's garage, you wonder, what is my legal recourse beyond a simple insurance claim? So you get on your phone, you Google lawyers near me, and to your surprise, you realize the lawyer pickings are slim. Unfortunately, this isn't uncommon in many rural Wisconsin counties. And that's exactly what we're here to talk about today on this episode of Bottom Up, the world of rural attorneys in the state of Wisconsin.
Welcome to Bottom Up, a monthly podcast dedicated to issues and topics of interest to young lawyers in Wisconsin and beyond. I'm Emil Ovbiagele.
And I'm Kristen Hardy, and we're your hosts. This is the Bottom Up Podcast.
Now, statistically, if you are practicing in Wisconsin and you're currently listening, you're likely a part of about 60% of attorneys who practice in the state's 3 urban communities, Madison, Milwaukee, or the Fox River Valley Corridor, as we call it. But did you know that there are 24 counties in greater Wisconsin that have 24 or less practicing attorneys in them? In fact, numerous non-urban counties have fewer than 10 lawyers. Additionally, in some northern counties, the problem can be exacerbated by the fact that the average age of most practicing attorneys out there is over 60. So you may ask yourself, where have all the rural lawyers gone? And for the 17% of attorneys who do consider themselves rural attorneys, what keeps them in these communities? Today's guest happens to be a member of one of those 17% of lawyers who practices in rural communities. We're happy to have with us here today attorney Karina O'Brien, a partner at the law firm of Kostner, Koslo, and Brovold LLC in Wisconsin, in western Wisconsin. Karina was born and raised in Arcadia, Wisconsin. She returned after graduating from the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Law in 2014. So without further ado, welcome, Karina, to the show.
Thank you.
Now, how long did it take you to get here? We're recording from the State Bar today, so how long did it take
Madison.
you?
If I would have driven straight without any breaks, it probably would have taken me 3 hours.
Okay, 3 hours.
From Arcadia.
From Arcadia.
Thank you for being here. Did you see any cars that almost rear-ended you on your way here or no?
No, I didn't see any. I did see a very nice buck cross my path on the way over.
And were you searching for cheese curds on your way here?
They're further north. The better ones are further north up in Ellsworth.
Noted. Gotta go there.
Yes.
So we know you're from Arcadia, but I'm curious to understand what made you go to Minnesota for undergrad and then coming back to Wisconsin to go to University of Wisconsin for law school.
I love that you're asking that question because I'm going to send this link to my mom so she can hear this. She's a University of Wisconsin-Madison graduate, and so she was always bothering me about being a Badger. And my sister went to University of Minnesota Twin Cities, and I was on campus and I fell in love with it. So when I applied for undergrad, I only applied for one school, University of Minnesota Twin Cities, so there'd be no debate of where I was going to go.
That's awesome.
Never considered going anywhere warmer?
No, why would I? I love winter.
Really?
It's my favorite.
Oh, speaking of mom listeners, my mom loves winter as well. We're Michiganders, but I don't.
I don't understand.
It's all right.
I don't understand you people.
So tell us how you found your way back to Arcadia after graduating law school.
Well, that was a long path. So when I graduated from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, go Gophers, I took 2 years off to work at a law firm up in the Twin Cities. I worked with Pascal Wokocha and Obi-Chukwu at an immigration law firm to make sure I really wanted to be a lawyer. And Pascal Wokocha actually told me if I didn't go to law school, he was going to fire me to make sure I went to law school. At the time, my grandpa wasn't doing well, And so I could have gone out to Boston, or I could have stayed close. And so I decided to stay in the Wisconsin area and kind of taking it further back. During my undergrad, I lived in Spain for about 6 months. So I got to experience a lot of the world during that time. And during that time, I learned how important it is, like 6 months without any face-to-face contact with your family or people who completely understood you, made me miss that. And so that left an impression on me going forward, because I was going to go out and rule the world. I was going to be an international lawyer. I was going to do this and
Really?
that. Yeah.
That's what I think I put in my my law school application statement. I had a background in international affairs, and I wanted to work for the UN. And it's so funny how far off I am from that. I was going to do human rights stuff and do the good work of.
Yeah.
That's crazy that a lot of people have that. You talk about how you hear other people's stories and you're like, oh crap, I could identify with that.
Yeah, to think I was going to live abroad and then to go back to my hometown, completely different viewpoint there.
I mean, Arcadia is a part of the world.
It is. You are correct.
It is international.
It can be international in certain aspects.
Fair.
So walk us through your career progression. Would you start with your first job? What was your first practice area? Are you still doing some of that?
Well, so if we're talking legal practice, I would actually kind of rope that through to when I was an advocate and an assistant for a woman with cerebral palsy.
Okay.
That was where I was really learning what it's like to speak for someone who has a voice but people won't listen to. So she taught me a very, very valuable lesson that people will overlook other people, and sometimes you have to be that person that says, no, listen to them. Then I was a paralegal, and then I went to law school. And in law school, I worked in the reentry project, and I did an externship at the La Crosse County DA's office during the summer before I graduated. So when I stepped away from that whole international idea of what I was going to be, I then specialized in criminal law in law school, thinking I'm going to be a prosecutor. I'm going to be a DA. You're going to put a Superman flag on my back and cape, and I'm going to fix this world one county at a time. And then I spent a summer doing it and found I did not like it. And I took a course called Hanging Out Your Own Shingle. Professor Michelle Levine taught it. It was my last semester of law school, and she challenged us to take a bigger look at what's out there. And so we would travel around to different parts of the state and look at what's available there, how many attorneys are there, what's going on there. So I had this plan that if I couldn't find a job at a law firm, I was going to go up and hang my shingle out up in Ashland County. I can do that. I can figure this out. And she encouraged us to contact rural lawyers and ask them what it was like. Well, I've known Bruce Brovold my whole life.
Oh, wow.
He was on actually the school board when my parents petitioned to have us change our school district from Independence to Arcadia. He was on that school board. So he's literally had some kind of way, shape, or form connection to me from that day.
Wow.
And actually, when I got my first speeding ticket, my dad called me my first case. Like, the file was labeled first case and everything, and he saved it, which really helped when I had to fill out that bar admission and give all the details. And I actually asked Bruce about that. Like, what do I do? He was at the grocery store, and I'm just picking his brain. And he's like, okay, well, this is what you would do. Go talk to the DA or go ask the judge for a reduction. That's what I did. But I scheduled a meeting with him and just wanted to ask him a bunch of questions. So I'm in his office asking him questions, and we're talking, and I'm not thinking much about it. And I leave, thank him for his time. And then in November of the year I'm going to graduate, my dad calls. He's like, someone from the law firm in town wants you to call him back. I think Bruce called you. Why is Bruce calling you? I was like, I don't know why Bruce is calling me. So I called, and he said, well, if you're interested, we've got a position opened up, and I'd like you to come talk to the other partners. I was like, okay. So I talked to my dad. I'm like, what do you think? Arcadia. I was never going to come back. It's like, well, it's Arcadia. It's pretty nice. It's like, okay, I'll take a look. So I met with them, interviewed, and I got offered the job. Had another conversation with my dad. Like, I don't know, Dad, I don't know if Arcadia is going to be a good fit for me. And he's like, well, why don't you try it for a couple years? You can live with me, pay off your debt, and we'll just see what happens. So, and I'm putting it pretty casually, but my dad was really marketing for this to happen. Like, he is just really pushing that this makes the most sense, and you can learn a lot, and we'll just see what happens. You know, if you don't like it, you don't have to stay, but consider it. Mm-hmm. So that's a long story of how I ended up at Kostner, Koslo, and Brovold as an associate in 2014, and I have not had any other job since. That has been my career.
So I picked up a couple of things and themes from that aspect of your life. So, you know, obviously the influence of family, the influence of familiarity with the city, and because you grew up there, and also most importantly, the influence of having a professor or at least a law school environment that, or class that challenged you to look beyond the traditional, you know, paths or presented to students in law school. It seems like those three things sort of led you here.
Exactly. Professor Levine really pushed us to consider where else we should go. But a lot of us were signing up for that course because we were already not inclined to be in the Madison, Milwaukee area. I remember during my freshman year, one of my professors and I met, and she was talking about my grades, which were decent, but they weren't top of the class. And she's like, you know, you're going to have to improve if you're going to work for one of these corporations. And I was like, well, who wants to work for them? Not me. That's not me. Not because I had any idea of what I wanted to do. I just knew that that wasn't going to fit my personality. I don't do well with hierarchy. I challenge authority wherever I can. I just don't fit with big law firms. And I mean, those are my preconceived notions of law firms that are bigger than a couple people.
So when going through law school and, you know, you having this experience, was that out of the ordinary? Did that experience fit with everything else going on? What I mean by that is I feel like, you know, at least when we went to law school, and this is not directed at any particular law school, but there was a sense of like predestined paths. Mm-hmm. And I think now all law schools are doing a better job at trying to expand folks' horizon. And you also said something that was also interesting. You said you went back and you wanted to focus or specialize in criminal law, which is usually very odd when I hear. And we used to say things like that. Right. It's like you're two. What are you specializing in?
Right.
What do you know about? You know. So was that an out of the ordinary experience compared to everything else going on around you in terms of, hey, these are the paths, and if you don't fit into these norms, you're a failure?
Well, I already felt like I wasn't quite the normal law school student because I was like, get me out of here as quickly as I can.
That actually is probably the
Kristen
normal experience. I think that's everybody.
No, you really didn't care about law school.
That is not true. I didn't care about you in law school. Not quite the law school. Just saying.
Well, my claim to fame on law school is I got out in 2.5 years. I wanted to be out.
Wow.
I wanted to be working. So I felt that I had also taken 2 years off. So I had a lot of people who were straight through. There are other people who had taken time off, knew a lot about the world, and were coming back. And I just always felt like a fish out of water. Like
I went straight through. I didn't know anything about the world.
Yeah. No offense on that, but
you're right.
It just wasn't a good fit because I felt like there was a lot of, you know, if you want to work in Madison, you want to work in Milwaukee. And I was like, there's a whole rest of the state. But maybe that was my perception because I already knew that wasn't going to work for me. So anytime they started talking about that, I just started tuning out. I'm like, no, I'm going to do something different.
That's good to have a grasp of that so early because I think to Emil's point, the law schools, and it's not their fault. It's kind of just how it shakes out. They push you in this direction because those are the options that we can see, or they have the most opportunity. At least that's what we think. So it's good that you were you knew and you stood in that and you were able to make that work.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Did you know September is Life Insurance Awareness Month? Now is a great time to evaluate your coverage needs. State Bar of Wisconsin members have easy access to term life coverage issued by the Prudential Insurance Company of America. To learn more, visit wisbar.memberenroll.com.
Hi, Russell Nicolay here with Nicolay Law, Accident and Injury Lawyers. If you have clients that have been injured, my office would love the opportunity to help them get compensated and get their life back on track. We handle referrals and co-counsel relationships on injury cases all across Wisconsin.
Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up Podcast.
Well, I have a theory. It might be unpopular, but I think the reason it's done that way, I think I probably expressed that in the show. It's to justify the expense of law school. So you justify the expense by selling, the areas of highest potential initial income as a way to say, hey, it's okay to go at $200,000 in debt because, 10% or 15% of you might start off at 120. That could be you. That should be you, right? And which is a deeper, but and this goes beyond this particular episode. But I think we need to talk about that. It goes beyond. I think it's a deeper issue there because it's like, okay, hey, what's the value proposition, and is this something we need to look into in terms of how expensive law schools are, in terms of what you're going to be making? I mean, I tell people this: if you tell me you want to make a lot of money and that's the reason you go into law,
Terrible reason.
That's a terrible reason to go. I'm not saying you can't absolutely, but it's number one, it's a very, very hard way to make a living, to make even the people making a lot of money. It's a very, very hard job to make a lot of money on. There are easier ways, and so. I think in general for the powers that be that are making or that make these decisions in terms of how people go through school, we need to start figuring out that balance, the cost reward, because I think if you take that away, if law school wasn't as expensive, isn't expensive or out of reach for so many, and I think it opens up the value propositions that you can sell to people so they don't come in day one or after the first year feeling like failures even before their careers started.
Well, I have a theory that law school could probably be boiled down to a year, and then we could do apprenticeships at law firms because, quite honestly, there's a lot of hands-on stuff that you don't quite learn until you're either at a law firm or you're out there on your own.
True.
I remember going to the courthouse and one of the attorneys stopping me and saying, well, did you remember the filing fee? What do you mean the filing fee? I have to pay a filing fee to file a lawsuit? Oh, crap. Okay, yeah, give me some petty cash so I can go pay that.
Yeah.
You know what else is interesting? As I was preparing for this episode, I was reading some of the state bar articles about rural attorneys and just some of the misconceptions. So there is this idea that people think that you cannot make real money when you go to the rural towns. And it's just not true statistically, especially in Wisconsin. So this is the final report from the Greater Wisconsin Initiative. So our listeners, you can just Google it and pull it up. But they have the stats more in depth. But essentially, sometimes people make more than they're making in Madison or Milwaukee, likely because they're one of few attorneys there. Yeah. So the work is being pushed to them, or just because they have a robust practice in those areas. So it's just interesting that back to that point about money, that the schools are pushing these areas. It's like, well, why didn't you think about these rural counties? Because they're making just as much, if not more, than you could be making in Milwaukee.
Especially when you factor the cost of living.
Exactly.
I think that is a fear that a lot of attorneys have that is not well-founded for rural areas at all. You can make a very decent living and be very happy with what you have. And I've never had a complaint with what I was earning, and I've always been able to be very comfortable. And I think that there's absolutely no hard, trying to think of the right way to say it. It's very easy if you do a good job to make decent money.
So speaking of, I'm jumping the gun here, but thinking about some of those reasons why young attorneys should consider, it sounds like money could be a big factor. Consider coming back to rural areas or considering rural areas. Do you have any other ideas of why people should consider coming?
Well, I think it's an absolutely great place to live. Right now, I When I was talking to the TriCounty Bar about how I was coming today, that's an actual 4-county area that it covers. That's one of the questions we ask you if you come join us. What are the 4 counties that make up the TriCounty Bar? And that's Buffalo, Trempealeau, Pepin, and Jackson counties. And we have a great group of people. But I think there's only 3 attorneys that live in Buffalo County.
Okay.
I'm one of them. And one of the other ones is the judge.
Wow.
So that's not a lot.
Right.
And so it's not hard to make money in that area if you are one of the few men standing at the end. I like to put it as the practice is more conducive to having a life. I can go into work, I can hit it hard. I mean, if I stay focused, I can hit 7 billable hours easily in an 8 to 5 day because I have more than enough work to do that if I stay focused. Now, if I want to go get my coffee or, chit chat, water cooler stuff, call other attorneys, see how they're doing, sometimes I don't get hit that. But that's if we're just looking at billable hours and not looking at quality of life and enjoying your day. At the end of the day, I get to drive down a road without a lot of traffic, normally with pretty decent weather, to my house where it's pretty quiet and just enjoy my family.
So it sounds, in your words, the main pitch for why lawyers across the state and even newer lawyers and younger lawyers should consider practicing law in places like Arcadia or the rural areas of the Tri-County area, it boils down to one thing. The ultimate sales pitch is quality of life, at least for you.
For me, there's definitely quality of life, but then the reason why I really stayed was because the people I work with and the attorneys I get to practice with are amazing. And I'm not trying to blow a bunch of smoke up anyone, but it's just, they are amazing. When I started, the joke was, well, how long are you going to stay? And then if I had a question and one of the partners didn't know the answer, I could call one of the other attorneys in the Tri-County Bar. There's a bond. There's trust. I fall ill. I need help. Someone needs to cover something for me. They're willing to do it if they can and not gouge me for it. Or they're willing to agree to just continue it until I'm better. I've hit a lot of hardships in the last couple years. Last 3 years have been kind of like blow after blow. And they've been there for me throughout all of that. And, when I had my daughter and I was gone on maternity leave, leading up to maternity leave, I think the 2 judges in the counties that I practice in the most were one of the first people who knew and were very protective of my calendar and wouldn't let anyone schedule hearings during those times.
Would it be, just looking at your background, would it be safe to say that for newer lawyers, one of the things they should consider is the fact that you get a variety of cases or matters really early on at a time where you're trying to find your form or your fit. For you, did you experience that, the ability to deal with diverse cases? Oh,
yeah. I had a deposition within the first couple weeks that I started after I was sworn in. I got handed a file and said, here you go. And I was like, oh, come back here. You're going to tell me what's going on here. And that partner was awesome. He sat down and mentored me and talked me through that because I didn't know the first thing about taking a deposition or protecting your client during a deposition or what was even going to happen. I mean, I knew on paper what it's supposed to look like, but what's it actually going to be like?
Yeah, and I think that's something that doesn't get hit on a lot. So, for example, one of the pitches for large law to newer lawyers is like, hey, you go in this firm, they have a bunch of different practice areas, and you can sort of, try things around. And I think to myself, probably one of the places where you could get that in a very real way are probably rural firms where a lot of firms out there probably have to be generalists. Is that fair to say?
That's absolutely accurate. I am a general civil practitioner, and I handle anywhere between... So I can start my day off with a family law case where I'm one of the attorneys representing one of the parties. I'm a guardian ad litem a lot. I do estate planning, real estate transactions, real estate litigation. I do probates. I do setting up businesses, different business transactions. Any time, collection actions are some of my favorite things to do. Working with various people. My mentors, especially at the law firm that I'm at, have been known as family lawyers for a lot of the people in town. And that's just amazing. You've got something that you need help with. Well, you're going to call Bruce Kostner or Bruce Brovold. Which Bruce do you want? There's also Terry Madden, who does medical assistance planning and other various things. So we help our community, and we're a part of the community, and we feel pride in the fact that not only do we offer legal work, but sometimes it's just a practical solution of, did you even talk to your neighbor about this issue? Maybe we should try that first before we send them a letter.
Well, that's really insightful. So for those listening, and if you're a new lawyer, to the extent the pitch is, hey, you should do this, the reasons are primarily better quality of life, a variety of practice areas, hands-on experience, and an easier way to sort of have community impact from the jump.
Yeah, and quite honestly, if anyone's really interested in rural practice, they should call me, because I've been looking for the right associate for a long time.
Do we get a cut of that if someone comes? Just wondering.
Just thought I'd put that out there.
Which I think this is a good way to this is a good point to segue into the issue of the rural lawyer gap in the state of Wisconsin, and the efforts that have been made, or at least are being made, by the state bar and other interest groups to change that.
So let me take a step back before you jump there, Emil, just to tee it up. So in 2019, she was president-elect at the time, Kathy Brost, created the Greater Wisconsin Initiative.
I did serve on that.
Oh, yeah, I noticed that when I looked up the final report.
Had to make sure to add that.
Yeah, always. He's gonna plug himself. I think it was for the assessment survey or something portion. I saw your name.
I was just saying it so in case you had questions of what actually happened.
Oh, okay. So you can fill in the blanks for us,
That's
Emil.
the reason.
But
Okay.
I have to give you a hard time. So the purpose of the initiative was to address a shortage of lawyers in that greater Wisconsin area. So that's everywhere outside of Madison, Milwaukee, and the Fox River Valley corridor. So they eventually created a task force, and the task force created this final report that I mentioned earlier, and it kind of gave some short-term, long-term plans. This was eventually approved in 2022, and I think at that time, Emil and I probably were on the Board of Governors. Yeah, we were, and helped approve that, and it was unanimously approved to do all of these different things. So thinking about some of those challenges, we talk about all these great things and all the good things about practicing, and I know you're not going to have all the answers, but just in your opinion, why do you think we have less attorneys coming to or coming back to these areas?
Well, to be honest, I wasn't going to be one of them. Mm-hmm. Mostly because I don't think I was convinced it was going to be a good fit, which was completely inaccurate. I think we get preconceived notions of how our lives are supposed to look and what is going to be flagged as good or bad. And I think that we overlook amazing opportunities because we're not sure how to make it work with that overall vision of what we had. And trying to connect it back to my own life, because that's the best I can speak from, is I boiled it down to, do I want to try to be a little fish in a big pond, or do I want to take a chance at being a big fish in a little pond? And I feel like I've gotten some amazing opportunities in what I'm able to do and the people I'm able to help because of my role in that county and in the surrounding counties. And I think a lot of it is people aren't necessarily challenged in that mindset. Law schools do the best that they can, but they do have a lot more maybe input or feedback or support from the bigger law firms in the Madison, Milwaukee area. They're also closer. I don't know of a lot of state bar events that are in my area. I was trying to think as I was driving down, what events have I seen at La Crosse or Eau Claire, because those are considered the bigger cities? And I don't know that there are a lot.
There are not many, Probably.
No.
There are definitely events for sure, because young lawyers, we did something in lacrosse at least
Yeah.
every year. But yeah, that's a very valid point.
And if the state bar's not coming up to visit us very often, why would law students?
Fair point.
So you said something that I wanted to drill deeper on. You said you didn't think it would be a good fit initially, and I think that cuts to the heart of the issues law school students sometimes, or newer lawyers may have. I'm sorry. I had to go closer to the mic, so sorry for the pitch change. You said you didn't think it was going to be a good fit. Why did you believe that, or why did you feel that way initially?
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Thank you to our podcast sponsor, Wilmick. Now, don't gamble with your legal malpractice coverage, because Wilmick sees your needs and raises your peace of mind. Wilmick, best bet ever.
The Marine Corps JAG program are seeking highly qualified law students and attorneys to serve their country as a part of the Judge Advocate Division. This challenging path of becoming a Marine officer offers many benefits to you and your family, unparalleled professional experience, and worldwide travel opportunities. Contact your local officer selection officer, Captain Leisman, at 414-297-1933 to find out more. That's 414-297-1933.
Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up Podcast.
Oh, because it was my hometown, and I was never coming back to my hometown. I would have told you I could make any small town work for me, but it was my hometown. I was the New Year baby of the year I was born. I was born in the hospital on the hill. I was like, crap, I don't know that I want to do this. They know me.
So was it more personalized reason from just the fact that it was your hometown, or was it something about a smaller town, have to go on, you went to college out in Minnesota, Twin Cities. You didn't have that angst about returning to a smaller town. You had angst about returning to your hometown.
Yeah.
Okay.
As weird as that sounds.
I don't think that's weird.
I had myself convinced. I'm a failure if I return back home.
I hear that.
I left. I need to go out and accomplish things. But when I came back and people saw me, they're like, oh, you're Dick's daughter. Yay. It's good to see you. We're happy to have you here. And then I had people like cheering me on to do well. Like they were invested in me doing well. And I was like, okay, now I really can't let anyone down. Now I really have to be good at this.
Would you have felt the same way if your hometown was Madison?
I don't know. My hometown isn't Madison.
No, I'm trying to get at something. You said you would have felt like, you would have felt like a failure if you had returned back, because we don't hear lots of people from like New York City, for example.
I don't know that that's true. Because I was just thinking, I said it's not weird because I don't know if I would feel like a failure if I went home, but I had some of that same anxiety. I moved away from Michigan when I was 17. I haven't been back to live. So it's the same thing where it's like, I've outgrown this. You know me as a kid. I've moved on. Look at all the things I'm doing. And I'm in Wisconsin, that's across the street from Michigan, but it's still a different place. I want to say it's like a millennial thing where we have this feeling that you got to grow and go to accomplish something. That's not true, but we have this feeling.
So, yeah, what I was trying to get at, though, just is to sort of get at the root cause, right? Because there are these premonitions about a small town, right? It's perceived as not having as much opportunities or industry. So I'm trying to figure out if that was part of the reason you felt at the time that returning back to Arcadia, which is a smaller city, would have made you believe that think of yourself as a failure. Because because my wife's from a small town. She's from Freedom, Wisconsin. And sometimes, and she's just like, yeah, I would have felt like a failure if I returned to Freedom, Wisconsin, because there's nothing to do in Freedom, Wisconsin. And it's not the idea you have when you go to college, right? People get out of the, I'm trying to figure out if that was a similar feeling that you felt.
I think it was just because the picture in my head was I was going to go out and conquer the world, and coming back to Arcadia was just so drastically different from that.
It's not The Hague.
No.
Okay. Okay, all right, that's fair.
I mean, I had lived in Europe. My dad was from Germany. What am I doing back in Arcadia? I can travel the world and go do all these things. But the thing that I learned was traveling the world and seeing various things just meant that Arcadia was that much more precious to me when I returned to it, because I was back among people who understood me and knew me and wanted me to do well. No one wants an attorney to come to their small town and fail. They want someone that's going to be around, that they can trust, that's going to be part of the community, that's going to do good work, because a lot of them don't want to have to drive an hour to 45 minutes just to go meet with their attorney.
How did you get over that perception barrier?
I started working.
You just took a chance.
Yep.
I want to talk a little bit about Arcadia. So we were talking earlier. You really sell it. It sounds like an awesome place, like a beautiful place. And we keep saying small town. Like, what does that mean exactly? You said it's less than 4,000 people, right?
Yeah.
Less than 4,000 people. Tell us about the community, the makeup. What do you love about Arcadia that keeps you there?
Well, we're a very interesting community. Like I said, I think we have, the sign I read said somewhere around 3,800 people. And our town is actually a little bit different than others because we have a lot of manufacturers. We have Ashley, we have Pilgrims, we have a lot of commuters because we just don't have the population for the jobs that are available in Arcadia. So we've got a lot of commuters. And because of the manufacturing, we also have several individuals that have Latin descent. And me being a Spanish-speaking lawyer has been beneficial to be in Arcadia. So we have some diversity going on and some changes that have been ever evolving, ever learning more about the community that we had and growing into the community that we are, and then taking a look at where we're going to be. So there's just a lot going on. I think the part that was selling you on how beautiful it is that we've got a lot of bluffs. And I was talking about this. I used to live in Trempealeau. And I would always, it's about a 25-minute drive into Arcadia. And from Trempealeau to Arcadia is a very beautiful drive through some very scenic areas. We've got the valleys, then you go up the bluff. And when the light's hitting the bluff and you're coming down into Arcadia, it just lights everything up and it's gorgeous. And then we've got the Trempealeau River right there. We've got a lot of parks. Memorial Park is an awesome park. There's a lot of open space and places to be and breathe, and it's just, it's home.
Now, Kristen attempted to set the scene earlier on. Can you paint a better picture?
Of what? I set the scene. What
Of
do you mean
the-
attempted? I
of
said
the-
it.
Well, I mean, she said to get out of Dodge. We actually have a town called Dodge that's about 10 miles away from Arcadia. So that is a frequent joke that we're getting out of Dodge. But yes, I can.
You paint a better
can do it.
picture
Yeah.
of the current state of affairs when it comes to the shortage of attorneys in rural areas. And I think it's very, because me and Kristen talking about it, we don't live there, and I think it's really, it's better, when it comes from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Can you paint that picture for us? What's the current state of affairs up north or in the western parts of the state?
Sure. I was hoping you were going to tell me to paint the picture of the drive into work, but I'll back up into what it's like to. So at my law firm, there are 3 other attorneys practicing besides me, and 2 of them have been practicing since 1975. And so they are closer to the attorneys over 60. The other attorney, Terry Madden, he, I believe, is 56, approaching age 60. Another law firm there's 2 law firms over in Independence, and I think 3 of those attorneys are over 60 years old, and there's 1 attorney that is around my age. You go over to Mondovi, there's 1 attorney that's about my age, and then the rest of the attorneys that practice in the area are starting to get closer to that 60 years old. So
When you say your age, you're in your late 30s, early 40s, I'm assuming?
Don't ask that. Wow.
It's okay. It's okay.
trying to give our
It's
audience
completely
a reference.
fine. It's completely fine. I'm mid-30s.
Okay.
So when I look at the next 10, 15, 20 years of practice, I'm looking at 3 other attorneys that are going to be covering these areas with me. And one part is like, that's a great business opportunity for me. But 2, crap. If I have a conflict, who do I refer my cases to? I have to refer them to La Crosse attorneys or Eau Claire attorneys. And if I can't help someone, who's going to help them? And so then it does put a lot of pressure on what is my community going to look like? And who am I going to be practicing against? Am I going to be able to trust them? Am I going to be able to have those collegial conversations? Because members of the TriCounty Bar, man, we go after each other in the courtroom.
Yeah.
But once you're done, hey, how's it going? How are the kids? What's going on? You know, it's nice to have that, not wanting to hate them the second you walk out of the courthouse. So that is really the state of affairs for the 4 counties that I'm in.
And now, a word from our sponsors. Are you a paralegal in Wisconsin looking to take your career to the next level? Consider becoming a State Bar of Wisconsin certified paralegal. Holding this voluntary certification shows that you are a professional of the highest caliber with Wisconsin-specific education and experience. Visit wisbar.org/paralegal to learn more about how you can become a certified paralegal and take your career to the next level. Attention Wisconsin attorneys! Are you tired of looking around those bulky brown binders? Then say hello to Books Unbound. With a fast and user-friendly interface, your legal research just got easier. Take notes, bookmark, and access primary law resources with just one click. Books Unbound is your one-stop shop for all your legal needs. Visit booksunbound.wisbar.org and unlock the power of knowledge today. Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up Podcast.
It makes more sense. This was in the that final report from the Great Wisconsin Initiative, trying to figure out where to focus with recruitment and building the pipeline. They talked about this idea of talking to non-law students, non-college students even, like getting kids at the high school level, getting them interested in the law to make sure they go off to school somewhere, they come back. Do you think that is an answer? That's a way you can build the pipeline in these communities?
It can be. I mean, we've been having high school interns for the past several years, but I don't know that any one of them have dreams of coming back home. I think some of it is just not understanding the opportunities or even the cost of living. It's a significantly different cost of living because we make the joke that you can go across the street to the bar, that's across the street, and have a beer for less than $2. No problem. So,
Can you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, come visit. I'll buy you one.
I don't drink beer, but I'm intrigued.
How do they make money?
Well, the cost of living is lower, so they make money and it's enough. That's what it's sounding like.
I guess I'm just used to being price gouged.
So, I mean, I do have some opinions of some of it is, yes, we could try to home grow our own attorneys, but the problem is unless you're going to have them sign a contract in blood, there's no guarantee they're going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, they can be interested and never come back.
So just let's kind of zoom out a little bit, just in terms of population growth. Are more people leaving these counties and these areas and people coming in?
I don't know. Just because I don't have the statistics, it seems that Arcadia is bigger now than it was when I left.
Okay. And so, and I think Kristen's question is very fair because when we talked about why you returned, there was it's a very romantic tale of you returning back to your hometown, and you could sense the fact that you had roots being a very important part of that. And so one of the things the task force had talked about was, okay, rather than trying to focus all the efforts and getting people who were not necessarily familiar with these parts of the state to drop everything and leave Madison, leave Milwaukee and come here, maybe we need to focus on people like yourself who already have a connection and who you don't have to explain what the place looks like to. But you're saying that you don't know if that would help.
No, I don't think I don't know that would help, mostly because that wasn't why I stayed.
Okay.
I always had plans to go up to Minneapolis or to go up to Ashland County. But the reason why I stayed was because of the mentorship, the bond, the people I was working with, the fact that I could go to the courthouse and I knew all the people. I mean, I had some great clerks that would call me, and my favorite thing to joke with them was, well, okay, what did I screw up now? Because they'd call and give me a heads up like, hey, make sure you do this, or were you going to follow this up with that? I mean, that was really helpful for the first couple of years of learning what not to do.
Yeah.
They were supportive. And so once the county and the surrounding areas had helped me grow and learn to be a lawyer, I didn't want to go anywhere else. They were my people.
What about other? So you mentioned a couple of other lawyers who have been practicing around the same time, or age-wise, or close to where you're at. Why have you ever gotten into a sense of why they stayed or why they came back?
Well, one of them, Nick Heike, is from that area. I think April Landy also comes from a smaller town, but she was from the Minnesota side. And I think that she has stayed because she has enjoyed the practice and has really learned a lot from that TriCounty Bar that we are a part of. It's a very awesome group of people. It's very hard to leave, even considering going somewhere else with knowing them.
Right. I think it's interesting that, we're talking as if the rural counties or communities are so different from the bigger counties like a Milwaukee or Madison. But at the end of the day, your reasons for being in Arcadia are similar to my reasons for being in Milwaukee. You say, cost of living is good, and you like your job, and you think people are rooting for you, and you think it's beautiful, and there are things for you to do and enjoy there. And it's just, I don't know, as I listen to this and I listen to you talk, it's like we are more alike, than we are not alike. Even though these are completely different areas, communities with different kinds of people, and the amount of people is different. Just the reasons that we gravitate towards certain areas is kind of all the same. And it's really about what does that marketing and sales pitch look like to get more people to come.
I do think one idea that I've had is that we continue to invite law school students to come out, because I honestly think that there's no guarantee to home growing someone. I mean, to be an attorney, to stay in your area. But if someone's willing to take a chance and come out and be mentored and everything else, there are some great opportunities out there. But they have to see it before they can understand it. I can go and talk and bring a bunch of the lawyers with, and some of the bus trip things I think they got right, and then some of it I'm not sure, because there's so much more to our practice than just meeting with the judges or going to the courthouse, because we've got a lot of community involvement. We've got a lot of being a part of something bigger.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, the bus tour, the effort set up by the State Bar a couple of years ago. I wanted to ask you this. You said it's going to take more than just meeting judges and all that stuff. People need to see it. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong if anyone knows this, but I think the medical college or med schools in the state, when I think they're, I think it's the problem's also translated in the medical field as well. They have this idea of having a satellite campus further up so people could actually go to school there, live there. I don't know if it actually came to fruition or if that was just an idea. So don't quote me on that. But I also know during the task force that was something that was discussed. I don't know if that made it into the recommendation. But trying to get law schools, the two law schools in town in the state, to maybe consider a joint effort or some sort of individualized effort to have a satellite campus in other parts of the state as a mechanism to have students experience these towns. What do you think about that?
I think that's a good idea, because I do know that some of the Minnesota schools that I talked to, I was talking to the Minnesota law schools also about kind of getting some pool of candidates for working with us, is they've been having a lot of part-time students stay where they are and do like online courses. And so that's been really interesting to me. I don't know all the details, but one of the individuals was talking to me, and that way the people stay in those communities. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting how they can do that.
I'm not down for online law school.
Well, I like the idea of a satellite office better than an online law school, but
yeah,
we've had those discussions about that.
I think since you bring it up, Chris, if you want to talk about the bus tour, I think it'd be a good time.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm going to break the fourth wall. Did the bus tour, Joe, Was that for students as well, or it was just lawyers?
Joe has been staring at us intensely the whole time across the table.
And now, a word from our sponsors. What? You don't have an Ultimate Pass yet? Oh, that's a mistake. Find out why at wisbar.org/ultimatepass.
Thank you to our podcast sponsor, Wilmick. Put your trust and your premium with a legal malpractice carrier that supports legal associations and events. Wilmick, ensuring and supporting the legal community since 1986.
Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up podcast.
So law students were potentially invited. For those who don't know, once upon a time, there was this rural bus tour. And basically the idea was, let's expose law students or attorneys to these areas that maybe they don't know about, again, in that greater Wisconsin area. But since it's been canceled due to lack of interest, Karina, why do you think people are less interested? Is it some of these things we're already talking about? I mean, I feel like if I was in law school, it's a thing I would say, let me get on the bus and just go see. Like, what else am I doing? It'd be interesting. So why don't we have more people interested in that?
I don't really know, unless it was because when they were going to all these places, people weren't coming out and saying, yes, you can work here. Hey, you could.
Here's a job.
Here's a job.
Yeah, fair.
Like, come interview with me. We'll get you a job. I don't know, because quite honestly, when I heard about it, I thought, oh, that's great. But then we wouldn't really hear a lot about the details, being the local attorneys, until they're like, well, we're going to have a mixer on this day. And that was, like, on my end, the most I heard about it. So it's hard for me to speak in complete detail because I was never on it.
Okay.
And I went to one mixer that I knew of.
So if we were bringing it back, if we could bring this bus tour back, how do you think we could improve it?
Well, I think setting up a shadow day with a law firm or with the different attorneys in the area, not just with the judges or with the courthouse, but inviting, like the TriCounty Bar, having a little bit more communication and saying, okay, guys, give us your best pitch on why we should be here. Mm-hmm. We could pull together a panel of our attorneys and say, okay, 1, 2, 3, just start talking and tell them all why we should do this. And
I've always thought it would be interesting to do something along the lines of, maybe it's been done before, asking newer grads or lawyers who have been practicing for less than 10 years who don't live or practice in rural communities, number one, if they would have considered it, if they will consider it, and if they did or didn't, I mean, why? Like, why? Because I don't think that survey has ever been done because we start to react to these problems based on assumptions of what we believe the problem might be.
True.
And maybe that's something the state bar, for the powers that be who should be listening to this podcast, may want to look into, because then you're dealing with the real, like, hey, we did a survey of lawyers practicing last 7 years and under who are not practicing in rural areas, and these are the reasons, or these are the top reasons why they never considered it.
might be because of spouses.
That's a good point too. That's actually a very good point, where people tend to go. It's a couple of their assumptions. You're right, but I'm already thinking like we know the answer, right? The answer is people are going to assume you can't make as much money. They want to live in a sexy area, and they think a bigger community is sexy. More people means more dating prospects, which means I'm more likely to get married and have kids and start my family. Or my family, my mom and dad and sister and brother, they already live closer to these areas. Mm-hmm. So I think it's probably is distilled down. We could do a survey, but I guarantee it's going to be those themes of why people don't go to these areas.
I think we can definitely debunk the you can't make money.
Absolutely.
That one's just so not true.
Absolutely.
Like one lawyer versus a whole community of people who need legal work, you're going to be making money.
It's already been debunked in that report. I was shocked to see it too. I was like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah,
I was not shocked. I already knew I could make money in the rural area.
So I mean, you're right. We some of them are just intuitive, but I think it would be nice to kind of have that objective data. Now, as it relates to the data, then there's a funny story. So we actually, we have a classmate of ours who at some point in time found herself in the rural style community. And I remember talking to her before She, after she made that journey back out west, and I would ask her, hey, how are things going? And she's like, oh, yeah, things are going well, except for the fact that I kind of have to drive about, an hour or so just to get better Bumble matches. You're kind of right. It is a real thing.
Yeah, it is.
She's like, yeah, it's great. Cold life's great and all that stuff because, right, we also know the statistics, and I don't know what your relationship life is like, but we know that if you look at the statistics in general across the world, or in America, people tend to get married to people who are closer to either their educational background or whatever. And I mean, it's just in rural America, I don't believe the rates for advanced degrees are as high. I mean, in America in general, we're like one of like 5%, and in total population, people who have advanced degrees. So that becomes a thing, right? So it's real, I guess.
I guess it could be. I guess it also depends upon your factors and how snooty you want to be.
Yes, that's right.
So, actually, I met my husband the day after I got offered the job. So when I met him and we decided that, like each other, and I sat him down and said, look, apparently I'm never leaving this area. So if you want to continue this relationship, you have to be serious about staying in this area.
Yeah.
Is he from Arcadia?
No, he's not.
Really?
He's from Partyville area.
Okay. That help me out.
Partyville, I passed on the way here.
Okay.
It's somewhere north. It's like probably around Portage area.
Okay.
So,
Is that where you saw the buck?
no. Buck was on the way to Centerville. Okay. It was in the Tamarack area.
And the reason I bring that up is just because I know that that's something that people do consider, and maybe that's a myth that needs to be debunked too as well.
Rural towns do have single people, and they can be some of the best people.
Hey, I don't know why people choose who they choose, but
it's not. It's honestly just, it's all about like
perception.
No, how many people are there? It's math. It's not more than it's about perception. I think it's just math. If you're like, it's only 4,000 people here, how many are men, how many are women? Then you have to go down to, well, who am I interested in? And then who's interested in me? And then the pickings are slim because it's not enough people. It's already like that in the world regardless. But when you look at proximity and size, I think that's the problem.
I think my thought with spouses was boiling down to more of it can be hard to find jobs for the spouses that will fit unless they're going to work in the law firm as well, or be a teacher, or do some of those necessary things that small communities need, dentists, hospital.
And by the way, that fact about people trying to get people getting married to people who are more similar to them in terms of academic or socioeconomic status. I got that from Hidden Brain. So Shanka Vedanka said that.
I love
so
that
it is
podcast.
True,
it's my
and
favorite.
I believe it. And it was really, you should listen to that episode. He was talking about the income gap in America and how it keeps widening because you have people of a certain class getting married to people of a certain class, and that collective impact actually then increases the net worth, and it's kind of crazy. It's very fascinating.
I just felt like giving you a hard time.
Gotta do it. Same.
I saw an opening and I felt like doing it.
This is not fair. You see, don't be like her. Like the first time we spoke on the phone, we had a really good conversation.
You started
really
this
nice.
whole podcast giving me a hard time.
It's just mean to me. Don't be Kristen.
I think a lot of both of you, and I'm very grateful for this podcast, but you get away with a lot, and I feel like I just need to...
What?
I told you, like, when I get an opening, I have to go for it. That is my German father training right there.
Wait.
That's because Joe cuts out all the time.
No.
That Kristen's just really dissing me.
Speaking,
but I've been sitting here this whole time.
Thank you.
I'm
so glad Karina can see that.
I feel victimized here.
Now, I want to talk about, because you just brought up your dad, and you gave me a great story about him earlier. So tell people about your dad, who I hope has the chance to listen to this.
Oh, unfortunately, he passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. He passed away in March of 2022, and actually his personality was such that I knew that the day he passed away, I handled a stipulated divorce hearing because I knew he would want me to be there and take care of business like he taught me to. So I handled that, but The story I told you, which is like the epitome of what it is like to be Gert Kurt's daughter, which is he was known around town as Dick the German plumber. And he was a very, very particular individual. He had a thick German accent. He wanted things done a certain way. He had a bit of a temper if things were not done the right way. And he'd let you know if he wasn't happy about it. And he also had a very dry sense of humor. And I was helping out an individual. They were my client. They didn't realize I was related to him at all. And we were wrapping up my representation of them, and I made some comment about Dad. And he's like, "Oh, you're Dick the German plumber's daughter." I was like, "Yes," because it normally came with some kind of story or some kind of comment. He's like, "Oh, I so get it now. You were making jokes this whole time," because I have such a dry sense of humor. And that just was the epitome of what it's like to practice in your hometown and have someone finally connect the dots of, oh, you're related to him. No wonder.
That's awesome. That's what I was, because I asked this question earlier about practicing in your hometown. You know, sometimes it's hard to shed this perception of being little Karina, little Kristen. Like, you're always going to be the little girl. And you said something to me that probably will resonate with many attorneys. Like, it wasn't that hard because I was always a serious child.
Yeah, I think I've heard from former classmates and everything that I was so serious, that I was very much focused on my books. No, I can't go to the football game because I have to study. And I thought that was hilarious. I was like, I didn't know I was invited to the football game. I did my pep band. I was out. See you guys later. I got to go do this. I actually skipped senior prom because Dad and I were going to go downhill skiing, and that's what we did.
That's awesome.
So I definitely was not the party child. I didn't have to fix my image at all. It was, oh, you're Dick's daughter. Yeah, we know about him, so you're probably the same. And the fact that I have a lot of his mannerisms, including getting words mixed up, very similar.
And is your mom also from Arcadia, or?
No, she was born in Madison,
Okay.
kind of grew up in Madison for a while, and then moved to La Crosse. And my grandparents actually ran service drugs over there in La Crosse. So I came from very strong business owner-minded people. My grandpa was a pharmacist. My mom's a pharmacist. Dad was a plumber.
Oh,
Very cool.
It's really cool. And I think back to these these stories you tell, and the theme we've sort of had, which are these influences, and your family's influence, your community's influence on you. And I know you may not realize this, but the one thing that's starting to really come out is the fact that you genuinely love, like, you have a genuine love for your hometown. Mm-hmm. I think that's the like invincible, not invincible, but very visible draw for you. I want to talk about the rural lawyer gap a little bit more. We've talked about the problem from the lawyer's perspective. During my time with the Greater Wisconsin Initiative, there was this idea, and I think effort, to also frame the issue as an access to justice one as well. It's not a secret that there are some counties where you only have one district attorney or no district attorney. You have issues with not having defense counsel at all. So from the community perspective, what has the impact been for not having enough lawyers for the people that need representation?
I know that the county courthouses are having to work very hard to try to find court-appointed attorneys and to try to deal with the backlog, or even deal with family law cases where you need a guardian ad litem appointed, where there's contempt of court motions, trying to find an attorney that will work for that $100 per hour rate. There's a lot of attorneys that could hang their shingle out on taking all of those appointments and just have a very small office and very little overhead, and you can make a really good amount of money because it's just backlogged.
You got me thinking now. Maybe I set up a satellite firm up there.
Well, there are a couple of firms who have done satellite offices up there, but you do have to kind of check in every once in a while and build up But if you're
Community
getting
presence.
court appointments from the court, I guess you don't need to convince the people to come to you.
So it sounds like there is a real impact on the community too, in terms of, justice. I mean, we're all lawyers. We're here to protect the system at the end of the day. And how has that had, are there secondary impacts in the community for with just not having enough lawyers?
I think so, mostly because I think that if we take a look at it from, let's say, Buffalo and Pepin County are served by the same judge.
Okay.
Trempealeau County has one judge. Jackson County has two judges now, but for a long time they were served by one judge. There was a significant backlog in cases, and each judge is doing their best to keep cases moving forward. But when you don't have attorneys, if you have a contested family law matter, and I keep coming back to family law matter because I get appointed a lot as a guardian ad litem. If you have a family law matter and you have a contested child placement matter, you need a guardian ad litem to make a recommendation. How are you going to get that if you don't have a lawyer? Or I get conflicted out. I was talking with a colleague of mine because I had actually told the courthouse I needed to take a break because I couldn't handle the volume that was coming in. I think I would get appointed to 5 or 6 new cases every time the court had a calendar. It was just too much. And they asked me, am I taking my hiatus off yet or not? And Attorney French looked at me and said, we can say no. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, I didn't know that. Because she's been taking everything. There's other attorneys, then we start branching further and further out. Then you start getting to Eau Claire and Holman and La Crosse, and, you have to continue going further out. That can be very difficult because what happens when those several attorneys in the area that know the community, know the people, know the resources are no longer able to help? We are sitting on a precipice of a huge issue where we're just trying to stay from falling off the cliff. We're struggling.
And now, a word from our sponsors. Are you struggling with work-life balance issues? Could you use some help addressing these challenges? WISLAP offers confidential well-being support to lawyers, judges, and law students. With trained peer volunteers, structured well-being resources, and individualized support services, WISLAP aims to foster work-life balance within the Wisconsin legal community. Find us on the web at wispar.org/WISLAP. Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up Podcast.
What are some immediate ways either the bar or the stakeholders, policymakers can deal with what I like to call the fierce urgency of now as it relates to the access to justice issues in these areas?
Force them to go rural. Just make attorneys go there. You're not allowed to have your license if you don't go here. Your license is denied. No, I have no idea. I mean, this has been a soapbox of mine for years. I think there are times when I am really worried about what it's going to be like 20 years from now with who I'm going to be practicing with, who's going to be there. I'm hoping that this is just a pendulum and that it's going to swing the other way and that we're going to get more people realizing that these are great places to live, but I don't have any answers.
I thought an interesting suggestion from the report was extending student loan forgiveness programs to rural areas. So similar, like a program, like if you work 10 years for the government, then you get your loans forgiven. Something similar in these areas. I don't know who lobbies for that, but I thought that was a good idea. Long-term solution, but a good idea.
I do think that there's something there. I was able to pay off all my student loans. I don't have any. So I feel very fortunate and privileged that I have that. And I paid them off within the first couple years.
That's another pitch. Pay off student loans within the first few years if you come here.
Yeah.
Is there what's the role, or is there a role for technology in trying to deal with the more immediate concerns of the access to justice issue?
Well, I think there's a lot of hearings that are being held by Zoom, and so if there are attorneys coming from La Crosse, obviously there's not going to be necessarily an increased cost there. But the problem is also when you have evidentiary hearings, we've all done trials by Zoom, and I don't know about you, but I hated it. Like having to get everything submitted ahead of time. But what if what if they bring up this, and that lack of being able to adjust or pivot or be able to think on my feet and not have everything completely hammered out, mapped out to the 10th degree, that I'm now giving them every single piece of evidence that I could possibly give them. And then you just happen to not include that one thing that you then need during, oh no, I hate trial by Zoom.
It is so underwhelming to try to impeach someone. So you don't, sometimes you don't expect to have to impeach them, but you now have the perfect document because they just lied.
Yeah.
Because in the courthouse, you get up and you're like, hey, I'm now showing you what you're like. So during Zoom hearings, you're like, hey, hold on a second.
Can you pull up document number 5? No, not 6, not 7. Okay, it's gonna be the one. I've done it. It's painful.
It takes away from the whole presence. I mean, one of the best parts of being a litigator, right? It's that moment where you get the opportunity to impeach a witness, and there's a way to it, there's an art to it, and it also means it has to happen kind of fast. And then you like, the point becomes even lost. By the time you put the document up, it's like, what did he or she lie about?
I recently had a trial where this attorney has this amazing habit of turning for her binder, and it's like, oh no, not the binder. Damn it. I think she just pulls that out just so then something's coming, because then the binder comes out and it's like, put it away. I actually have a really random tangent off of what you said, because I realized how happy I was in the courtroom one day. I was arguing my case. I was putting in my evidence. I was literally walking across the room to hand my witness an exhibit. And I realized I had never been happier in my entire life. And I was like, I don't know how sick and twisted that is, that someone's, like, one of their worst days of their life is where I'm happy. But I was like, I am doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm doing it well. And damn, thank you for whatever got me to this place. And I was never going to let that go.
I get it. I understand you. I know. I feel the same way. Is it sick? No, it's not. It's someone has to do it, and someone has to enjoy doing it. So thank you.
That's awesome.
And honestly, when clients ask me about litigation, it's like, it's sad, but it's where you're going to hate it the most, and I'm going to love it the most. I'm going to hate every day of prep, but I'm going to love every minute I'm arguing.
One of my favorite moments was getting, in a civil rights case, getting a police officer to cry at a deposition. And I know it was to most people, the secret's like, that's kind of, I'm like, oh no, it was, my client got shot in the back. So, yeah, it was, it's just weird moments. You're like, does that make me kind of a messed up person?
Maybe a little bit.
No.
But where we are strongest for our clients is when we're the zealous advocate that we are supposed to be. They are not paying us to be there to make them feel better or to make their lives easier, unfortunately. We are there advocating for their legal rights. And so sometimes I remind them that I'm here advocating for you and I will do my best, but this is what practically might happen. So I think that's another part of what being a rural lawyer is like, if I can tie it back into that, because I'm going to see them probably for the rest of my life. It's not like they become one of a million. I'm going to see them again and again, and maybe they'll come back to me, maybe they won't, but making sure I'm not only just advocating for them, but also taking a bigger look at the bigger picture and helping them out as best as I can.
So we talked about technology and its potential uses, and your answer was very litigation focused. And obviously the pandemic made that case for Zoom court. But there are subsects of attorneys, folks who believe that may not be the solution for other non-litigation areas and transactional areas, wills, trusts. What are your thoughts on that?
I tend to agree that access for justice through technology and I'm okay with having phone calls and maybe even Zoom meetings to try to get some of the estate planning documents done. But in order to really make sure that my client understands the full impact, I mean, what we talk about is so complicated. It makes sense to us because it's our world. Right. But when we're breaking it down to somebody else who maybe the first and only contact they have with a lawyer is to do a will, there's so much in that. And when you're trying to do it over Zoom, you're missing that human element of making sure that they understand what the actual impact of signing this. But also, we're supposed to be determining whether they know what they're doing, whether someone else is influencing them, what else is going on. How do we protect that if we're on a screen? We don't know who took them to that area, who worked the camera, who worked all of this. If they somehow are behind the scenes, nodding, shaking their head, that's terrifying to me because I had... I do actually guardianship litigation from time to time. And so I will insist on a in-person meeting with just my client to make sure I understand exactly what they want and do they understand exactly what's going to happen. And I feel very strongly about taking, again, a look at the big picture and understanding where my client's coming from and having that all be in person. So I guess I just have to live as long as possible and help as many clients as I can.
Or holograms. Remember that? So I didn't know if you remember the Tupac concert where it's like his there. That's going to be a thing very soon. You know, like, yeah, I may not be there, but you're going to see a hologram of you.
See, that's terrifying to me because even during COVID, people in our area we closed our doors to the public and it was by appointment only, but we never stopped meeting with people because people still needed us. And a lot of people in the community don't either have access or knowledge of the technology or don't want it. They want to look you in the eye and say, explain this to me in real person speech. Stop legalizing it.
They don't want a metaverse
Break it down.
avatar?
No, I don't think so.
With a headset, just think about this picture. So cool. Like, you have your headset, and you're in the metaverse, and.
I love the salt of the earth people that I get to deal with like the dirt under their fingers. So I don't quite see them signing up for that kind of experience. Plus, I think there's going to be a question of whether or not they feel like it was really reality based or not.
It's virtual reality. So, I was doing some research when I worked on the initiative, the Greater Wisconsin Initiative. There was some I did some research and stumbled into what was being done in India. India as a country has similar problems as America in terms of how it's structured. Right, you have these big urban centers, you have a population of over 1 billion people, and you have these rural counties and these rural villages. And I think India actually has a right to, I don't know, it's like a civil right to an attorney law. But one of the things they had stumbled upon as a potential solution were, they called them legal service centers. So an organization like a state bar or nonprofit sets up an actual building or physical presence where it's staffed locally either by paralegals or paraprofessionals, and then either the lawyers from time to time will visit, or they have these audiovisual rooms that's supposed to mimic almost everything but for you being physically there. So the client has a scanner, has a printer, you have this big screen on that you appear on or whatever. And I thought about it, but I thought it was quite interesting because there is this problem with we know what the solutions could look like. We want this to happen. The ideal would be physical people getting a bunch of lawyers to either move down there. That's not happening. The problem persists. What can we do today?
Maybe just the satellite offices, where I don't know how to make it work. But I guess the other thing I keep getting caught up on is we're not just fill in the blank. This is A, B, C, D for you. It's okay. This is your life. This is what you own. And I'm going from an estate planning perspective. Is a client will tell you what they want, and you take a full look at the picture and say, well, have you considered this, this, and this? Yeah. How can you do that? if you don't know what their life is like, or what they are, who they're, not necessarily knowing their kids, but knowing for sure how many kids they have and whether they've got a good relationship with them or not, or how they want them treated, or knowing even to ask those questions. And some of that is stuff that you get from interviews. But then the overall, how do you convince them you understand what it's like to protect a piece of land for generation over generation over generation if you haven't been a part of something like that?
And now, a word from our sponsors. In these uncertain economic times, the State Bar of Wisconsin wants to make sure that you and your practice have the best available tools. Ultimate Pass and Books Unbound are available for purchase using 6-month installment plans. Contact our customer service team at 1-800-728-7788 for more information. Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up podcast.
That's, as you say that, I speak on behalf of Kristen and only Kristen, but I think about companies like mine that have a strong career distribution network. And it's all about that in-person, face-to-face. You have a person building your financial plan, and you need to know me. It's no other way to slice that. I have to be completely honest. You have to know about my family, how I want to pass my money down. If I don't have children, I don't, and you're trying to sell me this product, it doesn't make any sense because you're trying to sell me on generational wealth. I'm like, I don't have kids. Who's it being passed down to? Okay, well then what's this plan we're making for your brother or your mom if you were to go before her or whatever it may be? So that's true. I mean, again, to Emil's point, perfect world, we have more people there because you need the human contact. But if we can't, it seems like the best alternative will be something like a satellite office.
Yeah, because, and I think about what we do, right? It's that trust, that humans form trust based off of physical, being able to look someone in the eyes, being able to hear them, being able to read their, their body language and all of that stuff. And that's how, and unfortunately, as much as, Mark Zuckerberg may want to thrust us all into the metaverse, right? That's still not how relationships are formed, right? And I usually tell my clients, I'm like, the lawyer-client bond, I'm like, it's Jesus Christ and God, and then it's me. If you and it's lawyers. If you think about it, right? Think about it's the only privilege it's one of the most impenetrable privileges acknowledged. I tell people this: you should tell me things you tell nobody, and that's what we're there for, right? But you need to trust someone to be able to do that. How do you build trust? It's things like that. I had a much more boring idea on how to solve this issue. If the idea is that lawyering is better done in person, right? In all the facets. We have a shortage of lawyers in rural areas. The state's spread out. I think there's a bigger policy solution here, and that's we need to improve infrastructure and transportation. If I could get to Rhinelander by high-speed train or whatever in an hour, I think that cuts down that brings people closer together. And a lot of states, and Wisconsin's one, we just don't have good infrastructure for that. I mean, I could go from London to Paris in an hour and a half, and I have to drive 4 to 5, 6 hours to get to certain parts of the state. And I don't think that's something, we talked about the infrastructure thing from an internet, access point, but just in terms of like getting people there, trains, we don't talk about that a lot.
Yeah, but it's still taking people out of their communities to meet with people who are, I understand the need to try to expand our minds. I just think, Wisconsin, Supreme Court or the powers that may be, just withhold licenses, make people go to rural areas. Obviously, I'm kidding, but it's my plea that people consider the rural practice and not necessarily disregard it as podunk or small. I handle so much variety and complex, there's very complicated things that seem to be my favorite things to attract. And then there's easy, and I get a wide array of all of it. So I'm never bored.
That's a good pitch. You've given us a lot of things to consider, and hopefully our listeners to consider about potentially at least visiting, if nothing else, visiting to see if these places can be a good fit, especially Arcadia. Yeah. You've given us a lot to consider.
Yeah, my door's open.
So, and it's a job offer. That's what I heard too. Job offer could be here in your future if you're interested.
Hey, I am willing to mentor anyone who wants to be mentored.
I love that.
I mean, I was raised by a community.
I love that.
I owe that.
I really, really love that you said that, because it's true. It's not just, regardless of where you're from, I think that's part of our call as lawyers, to always be in that position of mentorship, be willing to be mentored, but also to act and serve as mentors, especially in our communities, to the people that are to our right and left. So, lightning round, quick fire questions. Here's my first one. If you had to represent a fictional character in court, who would it be?
Donald Duck.
Can I ask why?
I don't know his speech impediment. I love it.
That's what I was thinking.
And his temper. I feel like I could get behind that.
So besides Bottom Up, what's a podcast you'd recommend to anyone, or a favorite?
Wait, don't tell me.
It's a great one.
Nice.
I love that one. It's like maybe 3 podcasts I actually listen to, and that's one.
What's your ideal day off? In just 3 words?
What season?
Okay, winter, since you love winter so much.
Ooh, skiing.
Fair.
Okay, speaking of, downhill skiing or camping?
Downhill skiing.
Oh, that was quick. Why?
Because there's nowhere for me in this world that gives me the same sense of freedom and joy as, maybe litigating, as flying down a ski hill and just perfect groomed snow, sun. Yeah.
I love it.
Something you tell new lawyers not to do.
Something not to do.
Yes.
Don't give up.
Love it.
I learned early on it's not necessarily experience, but amount of effort. A young lawyer can beat an experienced lawyer if you read every part of that statute and bring the book to court and remind the judge that there's something that everyone's just forgetting about.
Wow.
Be better prepared and you can beat them.
I think that's where we live it off, Karina. It's been a delight. I feel like we've been taking a class, getting to know about you.
And
about
Arcadia.
where you're from. Yeah, your history and also what you do. And there was something else I was going to say. You know, you started off by saying you went to law school because you wanted to be an international lawyer. I'm assuming you wanted to have some sort of grand impact in the world. But I want you to know that you do have a grand impact in the world because you are doing it in the most impactful way, in a very real way. You know the faces of the people you touch, and you can see the impact every day when you wake up and you walk out of your porch. So thank you very much for taking time, for driving down here, for letting us into your life for the last couple of hours or so. And I would say, before we sign off, is there a unique Arcadia send-off or phrase we should all adopt?
The only unique Arcadia phrase, there's 2 phrases that come to mind, but neither of them are send-offs. Do you want to hear them?
I want to
Yes.
hear it.
There's who are you from home, which means what's your maiden name? And then the other one is a favorite from my class from high school is get her done.
Get her done.
Get her done.
That's a great way to end. This has been awesome. It's so nice to meet you, especially as an actual listener of this podcast. And
You guys have been great to listen to. It's sometimes hard being a younger lawyer and not having necessarily getting to see everybody else out there who's struggling. So just hearing the various things, the various guests, the different topics, it's been a delight and impactful for me. So thank you.
of course, thank you.
All right. Until next time. Peace. Thanks for listening to our podcast. If you have a topic you'd like us to explore, let us know. I'm your host, Emil Ovbiagele, and we'll catch you next time.